Netflix's Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story closely follows the crimes of the Menendez brothers but misses out some crucial details. The show adopts a storytelling style where it tries to draw no judgment from the actions of the killers that it follows. And although the show tries to adopt a neutral perspective, Erik Menendez slammed Monsters Series 2 for its take on his story. Just a day after the show's release, he actually called it dishonest and used the words naive and inaccurate to describe Ryan Murphy. Now, whether he's right about it is actually debatable, but there are some key details about the true story of the brothers that the show just seemingly misses. So here's 10 of them. Number 10 being that Erik Menendez was actually a really talented tennis player. He actually ranked like 44 in the US. However, in the opening moments of the show, it highlights how the siblings played tennis, but how their father put immense pressure on them to perform well in the sport. What it doesn't kind of reveal though is that Erik Menendez was an incredibly talented tennis player. He actually enrolled in the 1989 Boys Junior National Tennis Championship, and this was actually just 2 weeks before he killed his parents. Number 9 being that the police avoided one crucial bit of evidence surrounding the murder. The Netflix true crime show accurately highlights how the police initially did not consider the idea that the brothers might have killed their parents. Instead, they believed the brothers' claims and investigated the possibility of the mob's involvement in the crime. However, the show does not underscore one piece of real-life evidence that would have proved the Menendez brothers killed their parents. After Erik and Lyle had called the police to the crime scene, they still should have had some residue from their shotgun's gunpowder on both their body and clothes. And this would have been enough to prove that they were responsible for the crime. However, since the police did not initially see them as potential suspects, they never checked them for gunpowder residue. Some family members actually disputed the claims about the Menendez brothers' spending habits, actually arguing that their spending habits never changed. Even in the real-life murder case, the sudden change in the Menendez brothers' spending habits after their parents died garnered a lot of attention. And as the show accurately highlights, it also became a crucial piece of circumstantial evidence that highlighted why they killed their parents for money. Now, according to reports, they spent close to $700,000 right before they were arrested. However, the Netflix series does not show that some of their relatives later supported them by claiming that their spending habits had always been the same and did not significantly change after their parents died. Moving on to number 7 is that the Netflix series introduces one major change to the real events timeline, as Erik's confession to his psychologist actually came much later. Now, the story portrays that Erik's confession to his psychologist triggers a chain reaction of events that actually led to the brothers' arrest. In the show's timeline of events, the police later wiretapped his friend, Craig Signorelli, hoping that he will make Erik confess he committed the crime. But in real life, things unfolded slightly differently. Erik's interaction with his psychologist actually happened after police asked Craig Signorelli to get a confession out of him. And in the real murder case, it was also highly debated whether the recording between Erik and his psychologist could be used as evidence of the crime in court. However, the courts did eventually accept that the recordings could be used as evidence. Number 6 is that Erik and Lyle were held in completely separate prisons when they were first arrested, whereas they end up in adjacent cells in the show. Maybe that's just to make the crime drama a little bit more entertaining, but the reality is that they were held in completely separate prisons after their arrest. Whereas in the show, I guess it's more of a creative decision to allow the two brothers in that scenario to sort of like explore their relationship, as well as like their prison struggles a little bit more intimately. Number 5 is that Lyle's prosecutor made a very controversial argument by claiming that men cannot be... He said that they cannot be SA'd because they lack the necessary equipment to be. Her statement drew a clear picture of how sexual violence against men was trivialized and overlooked at the time. Erik Menendez actually expressed his disappointment that the show never went over this detail. He said that it goes back through time to an era where the prosecution built a narrative on a belief system that males were not SA'd and that males experience our trauma differently than women. Number 4 is that the two brothers did not see each other for 2 decades after the murders, whereas in reality they stayed apart for 22 years. In April of 2018, almost 22 years after the verdict, Lyle Menendez ended up in the same housing unit as his brother. Now, according to reports, after the two brothers eventually met after 2 decades of separation, they burst into tears and hugged each other. And they're still in the same housing units where inmates agreed to become part of education or rehabilitation programs. Number 3 is that new evidence encouraged the brothers to demand a new hearing in 2023, where their attorneys hope to overturn their life sentence. So on April 18th of 2023, Roy Roselio stated that he was rugged and essayed by Jose Menendez when he was just 14 years old. Since this served as alleged evidence for Jose Menendez's pattern for abuse and violence towards minors, Erik and Lyle Menendez demanded a new hearing. Many have stated that this has come to light a little too late, but the brothers' attorneys has been hopeful that they can overturn their life sentence. Number 2 is that Lyle Menendez actually married twice while he was in prison, and his first marriage actually lasted 5 years. Number 1 is that Erik Menendez's wife actually wrote a book about her relationship with him. The book is titled "They Said That We'd Never Make It: My Life with Erik Menendez." Erik Menendez married Tammy Ruth Zuckerman. This took place in Folsom State Prison waiting room. Romantic. And although Zuckerman's family was not happy with her relationship with Erik Menendez, she described it as something that she dreamed of for a long time. Someone check that woman's hard drive. But with the show's limited runtime, it makes sense as to why it glosses over some of the details surrounding the true story of Erik and Lyle Menendez.